My husband and I tried to get pregnant for 3 years and 2 months. I am currently almost 28 weeks pregnant, so very excited about that. We did have 2 miscarriages along the way, and found out before we started trying that I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and had hypothyroid and also some blood sugar issues. So we actually, when we found that out, we were not planning on starting to try for a family yet, but kind of finding that information out, we were like, we know we want children, and we don't want to look back 5 years from now and think, what if we started trying when we were a little bit younger? So just kind of, even though it wasn't the quote unquote ideal time, we were like, let's just start trying. And it was a very difficult journey, finding out my different diagnosis, and then finally getting pregnant and losing our first child, and then had that happen again about 6 months later. And I did not get pregnant again after the second miscarriage for about 2 years. So it had been a really long time. And at that point we had seen 6 doctors, and every single one kind of just told us, like, we're kind of at the end of the road here. We don't really have any other answers for you. And our last doctor, we actually had a phone appointment with her during COVID, right when it started back in March. And my husband had been tested, and we thought kind of all the issues were on my part, and then got him tested and found out that he also had issues. So it was just kind of you see your chances getting less and less and less. And he had done some treatment, and we retested him, and they said, there was improvement, but not as much as what they were hoping for. So she was recommending we see a urologist, but this was during the shutdown, and so we were kind of like, well, who knows when we'll be able to do that, and we were thinking of doing intrauterine insemination, IUI. Those places were shut down too. So we kind of came to this like end of the road, I guess, of like, wow, we can't do anything. And she just told us, stay on the medications that you're on. It is helping, but not as much as what we were hoping for. So don't get your hopes up. And that is the month that I got pregnant. So kind of crazy roller coaster for us, for sure. I mean, it's an incredibly hard experience to go through on multiple different levels. I mean, physically, financially, mentally, spiritually. It's hard on your marriage. It's hard in friendships when you have friends getting pregnant and having babies. And we even went through friends having multiple babies before we had one, and just very, very challenging. And, I can't say that I know that, one day it'll happen for them, because I don't know that, but I would tell couples that, for us, the most important thing was focusing on the Lord, and just knowing that God does have a plan in this, and even in the suffering, that He used that and taught us a lot of things and brought us closer together. And also just how important it is to prioritize your marriage and just keep open communication with your spouse of where you're at in the journey, if you need to take a break, if you need to step back, or whatever that may be for you, because it is a roller coaster. I mean, you go through times where you're like, okay, I'm excited about this, I'm feeling good, and times where you're like, I don't even, what are we supposed to do here? So it's often called PCOS, is kind of the acronym for it. And it's multiple things kind of wrapped into one. You have the structural issue of the actual cysts on your ovaries, and then a hormonal issue. So typically you produce more testosterone than estrogen. And then a lot of times a blood sugar issue will be correlated with that too. So it causes insulin resistance. And those things kind of all spiral off of each other, if you will. The insulin resistance basically causes your blood sugar to be a little bit elevated. Our ovaries are sensitive to sugar, which causes them to produce more cysts, and just kind of keeps on going. And then the more cysts that you have, the harder it is for you to ovulate, for an egg to actually come through. So there's not a lot of information. There is information known about it, but there's not a cure for it. It's something that you'll have, the rest of your life. They used to kind of go and try to remove cysts. That's not as common anymore. I was put on medication called metformin to help with the insulin resistance in hopes that it would help with all the PCOS symptoms and everything. So, and something that I'm still on with being pregnant too. So when we got married, I had just turned 21, like 6 days before our wedding. My husband would have been 23, I believe. So we were pretty young, and always thought like, oh, we'll probably wait like 5 years or so. And then we found out my diagnosis a year and a few months after getting married, and we were just like, okay, let's just jump, let's do this, you know. So I would have been 22. So the first one was very interesting. We actually did not even know that I was pregnant yet. We were leaving to go down to Alabama for my mom's wedding, and I was late, but I was like, you know, I'm sick of these negative tests. Like, I just don't want to take another test. I just want to go on vacation and not think about this, you know. And then ended up having some pretty severe symptoms, like contractions, and actually visually saw the baby come out. So but we were in Alabama, there was nothing that we could, you know, I didn't have a doctor or anything there, and at that point there was nothing that really could have been done. So that was very hard because my husband is very positive and, you know, wanted to encourage me, and he's like, you know, maybe that's not what it was. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a cyst rupturing. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. And I kind of told myself that for a long time too. And it was probably a year later, after my second miscarriage, that I was seeing a different specialist, and I kind of described to him the symptoms that I had. He asked me very detailed questions of what exactly happened, you know, how late was your period, tell me exactly what you saw, what you felt, all these things. And I told him, and I was like, you know, but we don't know. It wasn't confirmed, you know, and I honestly felt guilty even calling it a miscarriage, because I knew other friends that had gone through it, you know, who had actually had ultrasounds and like seen their baby and then lost their baby. And for me, I was like, well, we hadn't announced to anyone, we hadn't gotten excited yet, so it's not a big deal, right? And this doctor, I mean, I will never forget, he put his paper down and he stopped what he was doing and just like put his hand on my knee, and he said, you know, honey, I'm very sorry, but you lost 2 babies. He was like, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years and I can tell you 100% that that's what happened. And that was very difficult to hear, but I needed to hear that. And I think my husband needed to hear that. That was like a whole year later, you know, that we really hadn't let ourselves even process it. And that was very hard then to kind of go through that grieving process, especially when no one else knew about it, you know. It was definitely very difficult for sure. And then the second pregnancy, we actually did have a positive test at home, and, you know, immediately got excited. And then that test should be getting darker and darker as days go by and your hormones kind of go up. Mine was getting more and more faint. And then I did start bleeding, you know, a few days later. So that was really difficult too, because I mean, as soon as you see that, you know, instantly you're getting excited, you know, you're thinking of what your life is going to look like and everything. And we kind of just thought like, finally, you know, and so yes, emotionally was very hard on both of us for sure. I would say just don't isolate yourselves. It is so easy to kind of justify it and compare your experience with someone else. Like for us thinking, well, we can't be sad about this because we don't know for sure. Or even I've heard other couples say, well, I was only this far along, you know, it's not a big deal, and just kind of sweeping it under the rug. And it will come out, you know, you have to deal with it at some point. And I would just encourage people to be open and be honest about it, because it's so common. I mean, there are so many people who have gone through this that I mean, all of us would know someone who has lost a child, I would think. So that's what I would encourage people, is to just reach out to other people who have gone through this and just be open about it, share their experience, don't try to hide it, because I think that's more damaging than anything and more harmful.